Hello, my name is Hakon, and today I'm going to show you another interesting thing you can do on the Empress Effects Zoia modular digital patchable synthesizer and effects unit. I was wondering earlier today, I was thinking to myself, how do I make the Zoia snap to a scale? This is something that can be really useful if you're working with sequencers, for instance. You might want everything to be in key. And when you're fiddling around with the notes of a sequencer, then sometimes you get notes that are out of key, and of course that can be interesting, but sometimes you want to keep things in key. And at the same time, the method I came up with actually makes it more like a normal hardware synthesizer, because now I have used two tracks on the sequencer. So one is for the scale within 1 octave, and the second track is a transposition track that transposes it up to 5 octaves, which is more in keeping with how a normal sequencer would work. And it makes it quicker to actually make adjustments. You can quickly move it up and down octaves a little bit. It actually makes it easier for a performance as well. Now the way I figured out I could do this, I'll just show you quickly what I'm doing for the sound processing here. So what we've got here is an oscillator. It's my usual thing really, an oscillator that goes into a VCA. The output of the VCA goes to the audio output. Oh no, that's not correct. It actually goes to a reverb, and then the reverb goes to the audio output. The VCA is triggered by an ADSR envelope, which is here, and the note input of the oscillator is not directly from the sequencer, and this is of course part of the this particular patch. It does not use the notes from the sequencer directly. It has to translate them into a scale first, and also translate the second track into octave transpositions. I'll show you that in a moment. And then the output from that, which is a little bit as a previous page, is then sent to the oscillator, and that's the sound source there. And of course the sequencer is triggered by an LFO, which you can find here. Okay, so how does this work? So I'm going to go back 2 pages. So I've got 2 pages here that are practically identical. And the reason is that one of these pages deals with the scale, and of course you can see there are 5 modules here. So this is a pentatonic scale. I thought that was easier. I mean, there's no reason why you can't do a bigger scale. I just thought for the purposes of demonstrating, I only need to do a pentatonic scale, and also I like pentatonic scales. They sound nice regardless of what you do with them. They always sound nice. They don't have, I mean, even if you have a bass note, technically you can start and stop anywhere in a pentatonic scale and it sounds nice, which is why I like them. And the second page here is the one that does the octaves. So starting with the first one here, the basic principle of how this works is it takes the output from the sequencer and it brings it into this, let's see, into this value module here, isn't it? Yes. So so the sequencer track number 1 goes into this value module. This doesn't technically need to be here, but it's easier for me to work with having a value module on the same page that I'm doing these other things. Sorry, I just had to double check my audio was working there, because the memory card door was open on my recorder. Anyway, yes, so the sequencer, and that is sent to the output of the value. It's quite easy to see now, is sent to all these 5 comparators. What a comparator does is it has an input. Of course, that's where I'm sending the note value now from the sequencer to the inputs. And then it has what is called a negative input. And this can be fixed, or it can be a value that comes from somewhere else. And what it does is it compares the input with or the positive input, it's known as positive input, with a negative input, and if the positive input is equal to or higher than the negative input, then it outputs a value of 1. I hope that's clear. So basically it says if this value here is greater than this value, then it sends out a 1. So what you can do with that is you can say put the negative value, that's the one you're comparing to, and you can put it to values of notes in the scale you want, or slightly below, because you want every time it goes up to the next note in the scale, you want it to go up to the next one. So for the first one here, I've got a negative input of 0, which is an A0, the first note value. So basically it tells the comparator now that any note that comes out that is, of course technically we don't need this one, but just to make it all tidy and a bit clearer to see what's going on, I'll put in this one as well. You only actually need the other 4. Because this one is always going to be active. And then the second one is a note value of, or it has an input value of 0.0249. And that is because the next note of the pentatonic scale is C. And the CV value of a C in the first and the lowest octave on the Zoia is 0.0250. And that means that this will not light up until it gets to 0.0250. If it is a little bit below, it will not light up. So once you get a C0, this gate here will also light up, or this output of 1. And the next one is 0.0416. Excuse me. A bit dry throat today. Sorry about that. Which is 0.0417 is the next note in the scale, and that's a D. The next one is 0.0582, and the note is 583, and that is an E. And then it's a G, the next one, which is 0.0833 is a note value. So you see I'm just 0.0001 below on each of these. What that means is if any note is, okay, this would always be triggered, of course, because this is the lowest A. If any note is between A and C, this is still the only thing that is triggered. So if you got an A sharp or a B flat, same thing, or a B, this will still not light up, and so it will snap down to an A. That is the principle of this, how I've decided to make this work. And the same here, it goes to a C, but if it's a C sharp, which is lower than the D, this one will not light up. It will still only be the first one and the second one that lights up. I hope that's clear so far. So basically now I'm only using 1 octave of values. So of course it's a bit limiting, but of course that's how I decided to do it, because it is the easiest way to do it. There would be other ways of doing it where you actually subtract the whole number and things like that, but which is the kind of thing that I also demonstrated in my tutorial on how to make a digital display with 2 numbers or 2 digits. You can use the same principle to actually take any value and create a snap to scale from it, but I thought it was easier now. And also when I was doing it, I realized it is actually more like a traditional hardware sequencer as well, so I actually quite like the idea. Now these output values of 1 as see, they are all connected to this one down here. This is the channel selector, and you can see it is jumping between channels there as the sequence is still going in the background. And this is an in switch. Just quickly, an in switch, I'll explain this now, even though I've done it before, of course. I'm assuming that whoever is watching may not have watched any Zoia videos before, because this might be the only thing they're interested in watching. And an in switch has, you set it to a certain number of channels, and that is different inputs. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in this case, 5 channels. And what it does is this value that is sent here selects which of these inputs is the only one that is sent to the output channel. So the principle here is as follows. Each of these values that can go through the in switch corresponds to a note in the minor pentatonic scale. So now you might recognize the numbers here. There's 0, which is the first A, then is 0.0250, which is a C, then there's a D, E, and a G. So those 5 notes is the minor pentatonic scale in A, the A minor pentatonic scale. And this channel selector, I'll just show you how I've made that select between these two. Now, the way that any switch works is it takes, the channel selector takes a CV value between 0 and 1. And the way it selects between the different channels is by dividing equally the range from 0 to 1 on the number of channels. So now we have 5 channels, which means that the first channel is selected if the channel selector gets a value between 0 and 0.2. The second one is selected with a value between 0.2 and 0.4, 0.4 and 0.6, etc. And all these values come from the output of the comparators, and the comparators has an output of 1. So what we want to do, another thing to keep in mind here, is that the comparators, when this one lights up, that is to say, when the last one lights up, all the other ones are also on. And when the last one is off, it's these 4. So these stack. I mean, when I'm sending these values to the comparator, or to the channel selector, they are added together. So the first connection is 19.99%, which still leaves it sort of below 20% and makes it select channel 1. The reason I'm putting it right below the limit is, of course, that you get the visual feedback of things lighting up, and therefore I like having it as bright as possible for these kinds of things, just generally. Now the second one is also 19.99 because these two are added together. Because this one will never be on alone. It will always be on when this one is always on as well, minimum. So these two together will become a little bit less than 40 and a 0.4 as a CV value, and that selects channel 2. And when these 3 are on, see the next one is also, see the pattern repeats itself. So they're all 19.99. I could have made, of course, the third or the fourth one, I believe, because it doesn't actually scale exactly to 20%. It scales to 20.02. But I think that's accurate enough that that will not be an issue whatsoever. So, so that selects the 5 different channels. And of course, when each of these channels is selected, then you get these 5 note values. So basically what it does is it rounds down the incoming note value to the scale, to the minor pentatonic scale in A. And that is the value that is sent out here, and that goes to the oscillator frequency. So, which is here. Okay, so far so good. So I'll just show you quickly in the sequencer now. So we've got here So that is the, let's see, this one, this track here is the one that is connected to that first set of, so let's see, I just put, so the first step is now an A0. And then make it an A sharp, and it doesn't change. Make it a B. Still doesn't change. C. And there it should change. Did you hear that? Okay. So it doesn't change until it gets to the next note in the scale. So the C sharp should be the same. D, now it should go up. D sharp, nothing should happen. But E, F, nothing's supposed to happen. F sharp. But G, and that's how it works. Because this note does not go directly to the oscillator, it goes via the first part of the patch where that rounds everything down to the note in the scale. So, the second part is the octaves. What I've chosen to do is to make one note step it be the same as transposing by one octave. So you only, so for instance, I'll just show quickly here. So this is our, okay, so that means that I'll just switch this on again. Now the first three steps here are A0. That means the first octave. But so if I do A sharp, actually did it go up? It's quite a low sound to start with. You can see which octave is active here. So the principle is that same principle as the previous one. So I'm starting with a so the input here is from that second sequencer track, and it compares it to first and 0, which isn't really necessary, but just to make things tidy and clear. The second one is 0.0082, so that is basically going up one semitone. And then the second one is going up 2 semitones, because 0.00833 is 1 semitone. So 166, 249, and 332. So you can see the note values coming in there. And you can see the different comparators being activated with the lights there. And these also go then to the channel selector here. And you can see it's selecting the different channels. And the inputs of this in switch, this is also an in switch, exactly like the previous one, is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5, because this is 0.1 is 1 octave up. Now, of course, I could make it more pronounced by making these go up even more. So if say I do 0.3 for the second one, and then 0.5. And 0.6 maybe for this one. And 0.7 for the last one. I think it's quite high. Okay. So now it's going much higher. Just take the baseline down on the oscillator there. Now they're all on the bass octave, so now I can go one step up there. Two steps. Two steps. Four steps. So it's quite easy to work with, and it's quite easy to keep everything you do within a melody or within a scale when you do it like this, and it is very much the way that a hardware sequencer works, which I really like about it. So that is basically the principle of this. So, and of course you can set this to any scale. What you need to do is you have to have, of course this will basically be the same, the octave page. Of course you can define more octaves than 5. Others did 5 because it's easy to fit in here now. And also it's very easy for me to do the mathematics of the in switch when I divide by 5. If you divide by more than 5, of course you have to, it helps to write things down if you're not sure about the numbers. Because if you divide by 6, it's a little bit more complicated. Dividing by 7, even more complicated. So a calculator is your friend, or a spreadsheet. And of course you could do a scale here of, I've done 5 tones, you can do 7 tones. Another thing you can do, which I haven't tried yet, is of course you can let the negative input values, you can change those dynamically. So for instance, you could go from a major to a minor or vice versa by changing the comparator value from somewhere. So you have, for instance, a switch that says go to major or go to minor, and that changes the comparator values of those notes that need to be changed, and it also needs to change the CV values that are in the in switch. So that's something that you can try out if you want to do this at home and you want to be a little bit more advanced. I'm definitely going to try it at some point as just to see how that works. So you have a major and minor button. That would be really cool, actually. So I think that's it for today, really. I think I've shown you all I need to do now. And if you have any questions, of course, this is a little bit more complicated a patch than I usually show on these tutorials, but I think I've made it rather clear. If you have any questions, comments, leave them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed watching this, please also leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. All those things that people do on YouTube. Share as well if you think that you know someone else who might benefit from knowing about how to do these things. The Zoia keeps surprising me because so far, every time I've had an idea for something I want to do with the Zoia, I've been able to figure out a way to do it, so I quite like that about it. Of course, it does have its limits, but the thing is that if you don't let the limits restrict you and rather let the possibilities guide you, then of course you can do so much with the Zoia that it's such an amazing device. And of course I've been so preoccupied with patching the Zoia now I've actually hardly used it in any kind of performance or playing sessions, but I will do that more as well soon. So yeah, I think all that remains for me to say is thanks for watching, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you next time, and I hope you'll be looking forward to the next video as well. I did promise a few episodes ago I was going to do one about logic gates. I keep pushing it forward because, or pushing it back, as it were, because it's quite a dry subject and it requires a bit of explanation and things. But I think I will make an episode about the logic gates, which will potentially be a little bit boring, but it will be very important if you want to use the Zoia to the full. So I'll get to that at some point. I may find something else in the meantime that I think is more fun to do, so I won't promise exactly when the Logic Gate episode will be out. So yes, thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.